So I thought up this great, clever name for this presentation, Public Engagement Beyond the Empty Auditorium. And then karma struck. Last week, 5 days after I wrote it, I had a full auditorium of people screaming at me about roundabouts. And so it wasn't quite meant to be, but I think we've all been a part of a public input meeting that looks a little something like this. If so, this presentation is for you. If you've ever developed a public engagement plan whose budget looks a little something like this presentation is for you. If you've ever tried to explain a complicated engineering solution with a graphic that looks something like this presentation's for you. And finally, if you've ever disaggregated your engagement data and it looks a little homogeneous like this presentation's for you. My presentation is going to cover 4 different themes or takeaways that I hope that you can look at as you come to your next public engagement plan as you start to develop that. And so the first storyline or topic I want to talk about is to develop a tailored story. And so it's really hard as an engineer. I've got these cool project examples, and I'm not going to be able to dig into all the engineering. I'm going to focus here on the engagement side of things. But this project, specifically Minot Broadway Corridor Study, we knew where we were headed. It's one of the highest accessed corridors in the entire state of North Dakota, and we knew that it had major safety issues. Within that corridor, we had 1/3 of the city's population and 1/2 of Minot's businesses. And so we knew we were headed towards that challenging conversation with business owners about removing access, and we've all been there. We all know how hard that can be. And so we wanted to make sure that from day one, we were starting to build the data we needed to be successful for those difficult conversations later. We collected very specific safety information because how many times have you been to a property owner that says, well, there's never been a crash at my driveway? Well, national data set, yada, yada, yada. It's very hard to convince someone that their business is a part of the global problem. But by connecting it to access points per mile and crashes per million entering vehicles, you could see really the undeniable correlation between those 2 data points. We also compared this to the statewide numbers, which is not something we often do in North Dakota, but we see in a lot of other states. And so we found out that parts of Minot Broadway have 3 times as many crashes as your average urban national highway corridor. And so safety was kind of the easy one. How do we convince the property owners that there actually isn't the utility that they think there is at each driveway? So we, with the help of, I don't know if Stefan's in here, but with the help of the city of Minot, we collected data at every single driveway, and we mapped it. This graphic here on the screen here is a heat map. A little tricky to see here, but the smaller colors, the lighter colors, those are 0 to 4 movements, and then kind of next is 5 to 10 to 12. And what you see is that almost nobody is using these driveways during the peak hours because it's so hard to get out of these driveways when there's upwards of 28,000 vehicles per day. And so we modeled this in a detailed traffic model that you can see on the right side of the screen. We found that as we started to add even a little bit of traffic, we couldn't get the model to let cars onto the road because models live by rules, right? We have to have this big of a gap to get in there. But the truth is drivers don't act like that, right? The longer I wait, the more I'm gonna do something crazy. And that was really connecting to the overall safety issue that we had on the corridor. So now we had what we felt like was a really good story to tell the property owners. And so what we put on is what we called the full court press. And they told me that these bullets are too small, you can't read them, can you make them bigger for the presentation? But that's intentional. That's really to highlight all of the great work. Really, the city of Minot did a great job in supporting a lot of these. We had focus groups with all the property owners along the corridor. It's the first time I've ever had a public engagement effort have podcasts. That's really fun. There were postcards, to 10,000 postcards were sent out, you name it. Again, the point is not to underscore what specifically, but really just to highlight that we built that story and then we told it as much as we possibly could. And the results were really powerful. We came at the beginning of this process, we had some extremely stringent access management strategies. We're talking about 40 to 50% reduction in movements along the corridor. And we found that in our 2 most important areas, we had a 5% resistance or preference for no build. And then in our most important safety area, we had 0% of the people say that they felt like no build was an option. So property owners were telling us, yes, access management, we need it because it doesn't work. You prove to me it doesn't work. Find me something that works. And they were actually leaning towards the higher access management. So it really was a testament to the storytelling capabilities that we worked collaboratively to achieve on that project. The second key theme or storyline is to strategize for all stakeholders. The second example is 17th Avenue Corridor Study in Fargo. I'm glad I got Jeremy here to be a part of this. This was a very contentious project. On the west side of the study area, we have West Acres, the mall, some big box areas. On the east side, it turns into what feels like a local road. It's got a couple thousand vehicles per day. It's very, very quiet. And so you can see the public's preference on those pie charts of what's most important. On the west side, almost 50% is vehicular efficiency. On the east side, less than 1/4 is vehicular efficiency. Now, this was another example where filling the auditorium was not a problem. We had several hundred people attend every meeting. We had a chant going at one point that said, "Fill the hole." That really was a testament to the underpass that the city had built that connected the commercial areas to the residential areas. And so we started at a point of really distrust. We came basically saying that there's some major safety, ped bike, a variety of other challenges along this corridor. We want to fix this for you. But they were really adamant that they just wanted to fill the hole, right? There was nothing else that they wanted to do, and there was just no trust in the city that they would do something that was the right approach. However, at the end of each of these meetings, there was one great meeting, Jeremy, I forget what the gentleman said to you, but we had to stop the meeting because of some nice comments that they had for us. I got a line of people that come up to me and they'd say, "That was really uncomfortable. I don't agree with those. It wasn't the whole crowd, but it was some very loud individuals." They'd say, "I'm scared to stand up and say the opposite to that. Is there a way that I can provide my comment? How can you provide, fair commenting through this process?" And so we had to develop strategies to really target those different groups that are often unheard when we look at roadway projects. The commuters, that's almost sometimes the hardest group. You can't get your social media targeted and your postcards. It's the easiest way to get people to a meeting is you impact them directly. But what about the people that are stuck in these unsafe, long delayed corridors? So we had a public bike ride. It really rallied the bike community, and they were one of our loudest voices. There is really no east-west bike corridor in Fargo north of really the south side of town. We had digital message signs to catch people that were stuck in queues, and we really had a great turnout from our overall commuting public, which I'll show in a second. We also made sure we talked to the various environmental justice areas, the minority, the poverty areas. We had a number of different apartment complexes. So we put flyers at the minority businesses, interviews with those same groups. We had the Map Bus alert and flyer system, postcards to property owners, boosted Facebook and Twitter at specific neighborhoods. And so this was a big priority for us because really the intent of the improvements was to make it more accessible, make transportation more accessible along this corridor. And again, that's not something I often see as a strategy within North Dakota. And again, the results were fantastic. I mean, it's funny, we left those meetings and I just remember thinking, why are we even doing this? This is hard, right? Getting screamed at for an hour, and then you'd have those individuals come talk to you and say, "Thank you, tell me how I can be engaged in this process." And we had people come out in droves online, several thousand people. We did a survey, and everybody supported the solutions, but then we're like, "Are we sure? Let's do the survey again." We did the survey again, and it kind of came back with the exact same results. And so it was, on the pie chart, you can see 58% of the group said, "Yes, we want these improvements, thank you." Then there was another 19% that was like, "Yes, definitely, but I don't want to pay for it, so can you have someone else pay for it?" And then there was still that group that definitely was heard about the no's. But I think what we're most proud about is the distribution of people that were participated. We had almost an equal distribution of property owners versus commuters. We had a lot of bikers. We had a lot of walkers, transit users. We found strategies to get everybody involved so that they could help have their voice be heard through this process. Now, the next strategy is to speak the right language. I think as is for me, traffic engineer, I get often sucked down into the level of service, critical crash rate, and it really doesn't resonate to somebody that's looking at you and they want to know about business impacts and quality of life. So we have a project, and this is my original cut at the slides, very technical. This is a downtown Mandan sub-area study, and based on the technical data, it was a slam dunk. Road diet made perfect sense. It's 4 lanes now. We have about 8,000 cars. People are going 15 miles per hour above the speed limit, and the business owners want to better connect the park with downtown. We have some ped safety issues. Really, all the technical information made perfect sense, but if you know anything about road diets in Bismarck, there's nothing about them that's a slam dunk. Just even the term we had to avoid, right? It was road reconfigurations. And this was directly after some of the challenges that happened in Bismarck. And so we wanted to be very sensitive. And so the first thing we did is what I'd call is we translated it. Instead of the stuffy suit from Fargo coming and telling those from Mandan that, hey, this is a great idea from the technical data standpoint, we actually used the business community to be our voice. They wanted to see change. They wanted to be able to better connect to the park. They wanted to have it more walkable and livable. They wanted to feel like old Mandan. And there's one thing great about Mandan, it's that they very much take pride in everything that is Mandan. And so by having their voices be the lead voices, it really changed in the way in which people approached us on the project. We also wanted them to experience it. And so we had virtual reality simulations for the meetings, but we also had it online. And so this is kind of like a Google Earth walkthrough. You can flip through between alternatives to flip up and down the road. And what it allows you to do is just really feel like you're there from an at-grade perspective as opposed to that aerial view. And then finally, we tried it. And this is a little bit of a mixed review lessons learned aspect. This is actually First Street. So the sub-area study covered much more than Main. So on First Street, we had some pretty transformative solutions, mini roundabouts with reverse angled parking to account for some challenges with some all-way stop control. And so as part of that process, we applied and we got some temporary paint, and we put the mini roundabouts in. Fortunately, FHWA did not like the color of those, and so we didn't get a great data set of before and after and kind of preferences to that. But it really was a great experience for those that wanted to test it, try it out, go drive around what that roundabout could feel like, because there is a lot of misconception into how those will look and feel until you've actually experienced them. So this one was really about translating that typical jargon into feel, right? I mean, people feel things. They experience studies, they experience roads, and we really wanted to translate it in that fashion. And then my last takeaway is to know your tools. And we really got a lesson in that. In COVID, it really separated the public engaged adept from the inept as COVID pushed us into different boundaries and areas. So this project is the Bismarck-Mandan Intersection Analysis Study. This included 64 study intersections and 10 study corridors. And we took the approach on this project that we... video coming up here. Frozen. I'll keep talking while I get this back up. So this project was unique in the fact that we really did not want to have 2-hour public input meetings for the types of improvements that we were looking at. And maybe this one's just not going to play. So this video, which I'll explain, is really designed. We put in 75 different pins throughout the various map. And what it allowed us to do, don't you love when you're talking about how good you are at technology on a presentation and it crashes? I just got done saying it separated the technology inept from the adept too. Just perfect timing, right in my face. Love it. Not gonna work. So I'll try to get my other videos going while I talk. So that project was unique in the fact that we weren't trying to transform all 75 of those different locations. What we were really trying to do is look at left turn lanes, right turn, left turn arrows, right turn lanes. There were some changes in traffic control devices, but people aren't going to come give you 2.5 hours of their time at night for a $6,000 improvement. And so we tried to translate that. How do we get people to be engaged for 2 to 5 minutes? And so we developed an online tool that was really designed exactly to capture that. It allowed us to zoom into each location, and you didn't have to come to a public input meeting and listen to me ramble on about 75 different need statements and 75 different packages of alternatives. You go to that individual location that's driving you crazy, you pull up the alternatives, and you have an instantaneous survey. So it ended up with 75 different surveys that people could do in their bed at home at night, be able to click the button, watch a little video, be able to say which alternative they liked, and it could take them a couple minutes. And so through the RFP process, we still did have an in-person engagement process, but we found that 98% of people chose to participate online. And we found that we had several thousand responses throughout the overall process, and through that data, we had, on average, people went on the website for less than 5 minutes, and they responded to 1 intersection on average. And so if we forced them to sit through 75 intersections and all they care about is that one left turn arrow, that would not have been a very effective public engagement strategy. And so it's really tailoring your approach to the type of engagement that you're trying to receive. Good, my video works. The second example is 17th Street in Moorhead. This is a tool called Input ID. Now, for years and years, it was really easy to get comments on alternatives because those impact me directly, right? That's hitting my driveway. Now, all of a sudden, you add COVID. We're not allowed to have our big poster boards and our markers and our sticky notes. How do you do that now? How do you get we've got so many tools to drop pins for issues. Every consulting firm has their own platform now. But how do you do that for alternatives? Well, this tool's designed to specifically do that. It allows you to zoom in. You can type in your own address if you want, zoom in and flip between various alternatives, drop pins in the map, and provide comments. And so 17th Street in Moorhead was unique in that it was so wide you could pretty much land a plane on it, but it had really no traffic. So there's a lot of widespread improvement options that really had varied impacts to the overall public. And so it was a great tool, a repository for people to provide comments on all the different alternatives. This next example is from downtown Moorhead. Oh boy, all white. I saved all the videos for last here. Guess I should use my computer. So this second to last example is a slider that is not going to pull up, I take it. It's a slider that really lets us show before and after with various improvements. And so this was a really powerful tool that helped us share with property owners exactly what impacts from a major investment that you'd get from something like a downtown grade separation. Let's see if I can get my last one. So my last video, I'll just skip that last one, is the Cheyenne Street I-94 interchange project. And this project was unique in that it was the first interchange design of its kind in the entire nation. And so we wanted to make sure we had a good approach to engaging the public so that they understood how it worked. And so one thing that we've learned throughout our time doing engagement is that despite the fact that our industry looks at everything from an aerial perspective, the public doesn't do that. And it can often scare their pants off if you show them a diverging diamond, they're on the wrong side of the road. But a lot of times when they drive through it, they're moving with traffic, they don't realize it. And so by putting them at grade and from the vantage point of actual driving movements, that it really is no different than going through and making a right turn and moving through this intersection. That it really calmed it to the point where this was actually a non-issue because we were so nervous about this being an issue that we developed such an educationally intense video to try to educate the public on that. And so with that, hopefully I was able to leave you with a couple of different lessons learned. I think one lesson learned from myself is always use your own computer at a presentation. That way you don't have to worry about all the technology issues. So with that, I appreciate everyone's time here today.